FNB Senior Economist Thanda Sithole joins me now. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. So what are your expectations for that announcement from the Reserve Bank later?
Greetings to you and your listeners. Our view is in line with consensus. We're expecting the Reserve Bank to hike interest rate by 25 basis points to put the repo rate at 4.25% at this upcoming meeting. Really, the issue here is that we've seen inflation accelerating, and the Reserve Bank obviously will be concerned about the implications for inflation expectations going forward. So they would like to normalize interest rate, and we think that there is still some room for the Reserve Bank to still hike by 25 basis points at the remaining meetings for the year.
Can you just help us understand what factors influence that decision around interest rates?
So at the moment, there is a lot of things that the Reserve Bank is actually confronted with in terms of making policy. First of all, we've got the geopolitical tensions in between Russia and Ukraine. At the same time, we've got significant inflationary pressures, particularly coming from oil and fuel prices, as well as food prices. So faced with those issues, the Reserve Bank will have to respond to that, particularly, as I said, worried about the effect that the higher inflation outcomes that we are experiencing now would have on inflation expectations over the medium term. But at the same time, the Reserve Bank is also faced with rising global interest rate. We've seen the Federal Reserve Bank, the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank hiking interest rate for the first time since 2018, and other developed developed economies, central banks as well have hiked. The Bank of England has hiked. The Bank of New Zealand has also hiked, and the Bank of Canada all have hiked, worried about above target inflation outcomes that they have been experiencing over the past few months.
Mm-hmm. Let's take it as a given then that there will be that interest rate hike, as most economists are predicting. What does it mean for people living in South Africa?
Obviously, first of all, the biggest problem is inflation and what it could mean for other prices as well, generally in the economy. So the first thing that the Reserve Bank would like to do is to ensure that that does not happen. It does not spill over to other prices by punishing or by increasing interest rate. But on the other hand, the rise or the increase in interest rate simply means that the savings that people realized over the past few weeks, particularly in 2020, when the Reserve Bank reduced interest rate by a cumulative 300 basis points, those savings, particularly from paying your mortgages, are now going to be reduced. So you'll start to pay more now than what you were paying during the pandemic in 2020. It means that you will have less to spend on other essential items such as food and other items. Yes.
All right, there's also concern about inflation, and inflation not only going beyond that bank's ideal 4.5% midpoint, but past the 6% mark as well.
That risk is there, and we see it particularly in the near term, April, May, and June, possibly as a result of significantly increased oil prices. But we think that inflation is going to moderate going forward, particularly from the second half of this year, as tensions between these countries ease and oil prices begin to also ease a bit.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know if I can ask you to look too far into the future, but what do you think we can expect to see at the end of 2022 in terms of the repo rate?
So, as I said, we expect the SAB to increase interest rate by 25 basis point hike at all the remaining meetings this year. That will put the repo rate at 5.25%. But I must say there is a risk that the SAB could actually front load these interest rate hikes. So you could see the SARB hiking by 50 basis point hike in the near term instead of 25 basis point hike. But that is not our base case at the moment. The real issue there would be if inflation expectations deviate or drift significantly higher or above the 4.5 midpoint of the Reserve Bank target. In that environment, you might see the Reserve Bank hiking by 50 basis points instead of 25 basis points. But we'll still see the repo rate ending the year at 5.25%.
Thank you so much for your time and insight this afternoon. FNB Senior Economist Thanda Sithole joining us there, just taking a look ahead to that announcement that's coming in just under half an hour. Of course, we'll bring it to you live on SABC News.